Welcome to Grew with Portia, the podcast that uncovers the hidden treasures within grief. I'm your host, Portia the producer, and I'm inviting you to join me on a transformative journey where we will exchange laughter, of course the best medicine of them all, reflect on cherished memories. Remember that time that the little boy grabbed my hand instead of his mother's at the amusement park? Yikes. And of course discover gratitude while navigating one of life's hardest challenges, loss. So get ready to grow with me, Portia the producer. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Grew with Portia. I am your host, Portia Booker, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep up with all things Grew with Portia. One of the things that I've said to many of you is that I believe each of us, when we go through a transition, whether it's a transition in our own identity, the transition of a physical loss in our life, or any other thing, transition is the birthplace of transformation. Let me say that one more time. Transition is the birthplace of transformation. So today I am joined by two amazing individuals who experienced the transition of their daughter, Havi. And this was several years ago, but they still carry her legacy in their heart. Today I'm joined by Miss Myra Sack, who is the author of the book 57 Fridays, and also her husband, Dr. Matthew Goldstein, who is the founder of JScreen, which is a genetic testing nonprofit. So welcome both of you to Grew with Portia. How are you today?
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here. Great to be here.
Well, it's an honor again to have both of you. As I mentioned, each of us has gone through a loss or transition in our life. But before we dive into the work that both of you are doing in advocacy, in medicine, I want to take a minute for both of you to be able to share with our audience who Havi was and what you want people to remember about your daughter.
You start, babe.
Havi was born 2 years to the day of our wedding anniversary. So she was born on September 4th, 2018. And she was big-eyed, had an incredible spirit, a brightness, a sort of attentiveness that I think this world desperately needs. She could kind of take over a room by just being exactly who she was, where she was, and almost a consummate reminder that we are, whomever we are is enough and more. And so that's how I hope she's remembered.
I think that Hav had a wisdom beyond her years that everyone who came in contact with her could sense and feel. And it changed the way that people interacted with each other and with their communities when they were in her space and in her environment. And you talk about the idea of transforming, and she had this power to transform people and to transform places. And I think what Maya and I do now and how we live is to try and carry that power forward and share and spread it as much as we can.
You know, Dr. Goldstein, I love that you brought up wisdom, because that's one thing that each of us carries with us, whether it's from our grandparents, our parents. My great-grandmother read this book called The Game of Life by Florence Scovel Shinn. I'm sure both of you have heard of that book. And there's the very beginning of that book, there's a quote that says, "May wonders never cease." And I was fascinated by that as a little kid. I'm like, man, where did Nanny come up with that? Well, then as I got older, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is where Nanny borrowed this phrase. But we remember the imprints that people share with us as far as Havi, her wisdom, right? 2 years old, bringing people together, reminding us to be present. That's the beautiful part of children. And I love how both of you have taken her legacy and paid it forward to help more and more people. Myra, I'm going to start with you. We're going to start with 57 Fridays. It's not easy to pin something like this when you've experienced the loss. I don't know what it's like to lose a child, but I know what it's like to feel the loss and the void. I'm curious for our audience, Myra, when you were writing this book, when did you realize that this could be that guide for some other parents out there who have experienced the loss of a child, whether it's through Tay-Sachs or any other type of incident?
Thank you. We were talking just before the show about that period in your life when you kind of can't even imagine how you did something that you did. And in some ways, I think writing this book was an opportunity to get into contact with what is true and deep and real and raw in me and in our relationship, in my relationship to Matt and to Javi. And so I think the act of writing and experiencing relationship in that way was really the moment when I appreciated the power of sharing a story. And I think that for any parent out there, for any child, for any sister or brother or grandparent or granddaughter or friend, the opportunity to share your life story in some way is a gift and it's a blessing. And I think that's the moment that I realized whatever anyone may or may not take from this book that they can relate to or connect with, the act of storytelling is the gift, and it's the gift that we each have inside of us that deserves a place and a platform at some point.
And Myra, I love how you reiterated about the power of storytelling because I'm a firm believer that people need to hear the story in the way that you share it, right? It's going to
Mm.
resonate with the right people just because of who you are, right? Whether it's you, Myra, sharing it, or you, Dr. Goldstein, our words have power and they carry a frequency. We all have some type of frequency. And so I really appreciate you sharing that because it's very personal, like cracking open an egg, literally, to
Mm.
share the hurts, the grieving nights, the confusion, the anger at your faith, being mad at God, being mad at the world, because
Mm.
we don't want to show that because in the world, there's this level of double standard when it comes to vulnerability, especially for women. As women, we're not allowed to be angry, right? We're supposed to be cool, calm, and collective, like, the rocket popsicles. We're supposed to be cool like those all the time, right? But
Totally.
in the instance of if you're a man, you're allowed to be angry, right? So it's kind of finding that middle ground
Mm.
amongst, the collective. And so for you, Matt, let me pivot to you, Dr. Goldstein. You have a background obviously in biotech and science. And I'm curious, when did you realize that genetic testing needed to have more access, right? Because let's be realistic, in the world that we live in, healthcare is a big kind of public health crisis. But when did you realize that JScreen needed to come into existence based on your experience with your daughter, Javi?
Myra and I are both Ashkenazi Jewish by background, and there are a number of genetic diseases that are more common in the Jewish population, just as there are genetic diseases common in all ethnicities and backgrounds. And we had what's called preconception carrier screening, which is screening for genetic diseases prior to starting a family. And Myra was identified as a carrier, and I was not. So we got pregnant. She got pregnant naturally, and it turned out that the physician who had ordered my test in Boston in an esteemed institution ordered the wrong test and misreported my carrier status, which is just like inconceivable. And we learned that shortly after Javi's diagnosis. And I couldn't believe that that had happened. And look, as a trained physician, I know that mistakes are made all the time. And there's obviously no malintent. We have a system that unfortunately isn't foolproof and fail-safe. Um, but this is the type of error that should never happen. And as I dug into how that occurred, it became so clear to me that we have this incredible capability in preventive genetics. Our knowledge of genomics and the genome and the relationship between genes and disease, we know so much and we don't use it. We just don't use it in medicine. And there's lots of reasons why, but the bottom line is genetics is complicated, and I think when I came across JScreen and learned about what they do, it became very, very clear to me that had we known about that organization, had my physician known about that organization that really provided support and education and guidance around testing, Javi would still be here. And that is something that I feel like needs to be everywhere. It's the most powerful tool we have, maybe second to vaccines to prevent disease is genomic screening and genetic screening. And that should be, as you said, it should be a public health universal. So that's really what we're trying to do at JScreen now.
And I love that, Dr. Goldstein. Lots of love to you because as a physician, right? You're standing there like, what the heck? I'm in the best institution, and you mean to tell me that
Hmm.
I fell through the cracks as a
Hmm.
professional? We know that these things happen across the border, but now you're in that seat of, oh, I'm the one now. So I want to see some changes. I don't want my story to be somebody else's. And that's where it starts, is that problem, that loss to the legacy. And I really
Mm.
appreciate both of you, what you're doing. And Myra, I want to go back to you really quick. You brought up the relationship component. And let's be realistic. I have another friend, both parents lost a child by suicide. And I've seen how both of their relationships have been pulled apart because each parent grieves differently. And I'm curious for both of you, Myra and Dr. Goldstein, what has helped both of you to preserve your relationship and also your faith while navigating the loss of Havi?
One thing that comes to mind immediately is something you were talking about, which was in storytelling, so often we shy away from proximity to pain. And therefore, like as a people, as communities, in relationship with ourselves and each other, have so few skills to encounter pain and difficulty and real, raw challenges that inevitably will happen to us. And so I think when Matt and I were first processing the reality that we would have a year or so with our daughter, and she would only be 2.5 when she'd die, it wasn't a cognitive exercise that we were doing to figure out how we were going to live through this and how our relationship was going to survive it. It really became embodied. And so we started running together, walking together with Havi, without Havi, and really were relying on the power of movement, of that kind of natural regulating mechanism that we have in us to move with, not away from, what was going to be impossible. And so the first sort of element that has been and continues to be a real survival mechanism for us as a couple is moving together, and doing that over and over and over again when we need to. And then the second part of us is really this reliance and recognition that we're a part of a community that is beyond the two of us, and how we turn towards them in moments where each of us needs someone other than the other person, because it's quite painful to see the person you love most shattered and all the implications of that. And so there is also the reality that sometimes we each need others to sort of hold ourselves up in some of those moments. And then the final is, maybe the final element is the power of ritual that we've like continued to turn towards. And for us, it started as what we came to call Shabirthdays, which was this combination of Shabbat, which we had celebrated on every Friday, and then Javi's birthday, which she'd only get 2 of. And so how could we give her more? And so that we ended up getting 57 of those Shabirthdays, as we'd come to call them, while Havi was on this earth. But still now today, 5 years later, we turn to that ritual as a space that's both public and private in some ways to kind of to inhabit, to dwell in moments of just of the deepest anguish and the brightest love. And so I think those are sort of the three ways that we have, I don't know, that we have come to trust in ourselves and each other. And it continues to be really hard and beautiful all the time.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Dr. Goldstein?
No, I mean, I think what Mai said is like so spot on, and we talk about it all the time that like movement, community, and ritual is the framework that we rely on to navigate this. And and I think the other thing just to underscore it is the importance of like going deep into grief, going deep into that pain and peeling back all the layers of what's going on and how that changes and evolves over time. And I think we have developed over time the muscle to engage in that conversation very authentically and in some cases in a very raw way with grace and support of one another and not shying away from that and being able to go deep and inhabit those spaces is it's hard, but it's so important. And I think that's been a really really critical component of um, really strengthening our relationship as we navigate this, as we navigate it and continue to navigate this.
I love the ritual aspect and also that sense of community because I tell people that when you're grieving, you got to have that community around you. That community is going to let you cry, the ugly cry, the kind I'm talking
Mm,
about where the snot, you can tow your own car from it, that kind. You got to have those people that are going to hold you. You also have to have those rituals, whether it's honoring their birthdays, their transition anniversary. I do that every year for my mom. I
mm,
on her birthday, I make a post on social media and I'll go and have her favorite dinner.
mm,
We did a balloon release for her the first year that she transitioned. So honoring those things. And then also going back to also what you said too, Matt, is that giving people the permission and honor to see what grief really is. Because let's be realistic, social media wants to doctor it all up. They want to put grief in this little box and say, this is what it looks like, the 5 stages. Once you're out of it, then it's going to be like eat, sleep, repeat. But we know that's not the case
mm,
because some years, right, we just finished Mother's Day, Father's Day, right? Every year, those holidays are going to look different.
mm,
Some years you may have, I can smile about Javi, where other days I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm going to need a bucket to hold all the tears because it's like Niagara Falls in my house, right? So I think it's giving people permission to see the authentic side of grief, knowing that this story holds close to our hearts. It's heartbreaking, it's bittersweet, but also beautiful, right? And knowing that somebody else can see what we've gone through and give them permission to set themselves free from holding in all the grief. Before we continue the conversation, Myra and Dr. Goldstein, if our audience wants to connect with you, get a copy of your book, obviously learn more about JScreen, please share with our audience how they can do that.
Yeah, so they can go to jscreen.org, O-R-G. There's lots of information on that website. They can also reach out to me. It's Matt, M-A-T-T, at jscreen.org, and happy to connect with anyone about any topic.
Excellent.
Yeah, same here. My email is myra at emotion-mc.org. And the organization that I founded and lead is called Emotion. Our website is www.emotion-mc.org. The MC stands for Movement Community.
Love it. So as both Myra mentioned and Dr. Goldstein, they provided their emails, which we'll put in the show notes. JScreen.org. You can also, utilize AI as your friend because AI has data on all of us, right? Might even have some funny little quirks or stories about us, right? I've seen these things on social media where it says, ask AI to roast you. I don't even want to know what AI is going to say about me roasting me, other than I'm a patchy squirrel living in the human world, but that's a whole other story. Dr. Goldstein and Myra, this has been a beautiful conversation, and we'll be wrapping up here soon, but I have two more key questions for both of you. When we think about the current world of today, there's always been a public health crisis around access to healthcare, access to screenings. And I'm curious, Dr. Goldstein, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions that people still have about genetic testing? And what do you hope families begin to understand about the power of having early access like a JScreen and awareness?
Mm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a lot of fear around genetics. What does it mean for me? What am I going to do with it? Am I going to learn that I'm going to die of some disease that has no treatment and has no cure? And I think the first comment about that is that we always try to do tests for which there are actions, there are things that people can do with that information. And that may be therapies, that may be treatment protocols, that may be different approaches to getting pregnant or starting a family. But I think the other thing that gets lost a little bit, and I think that we've experienced, is that we live in a very medicalized society, and we think about intervention in the context of medicine, of a pill or a surgery or a procedure. But I think that really what we want, we want to live rich, full lives. We want to live lives of meaning and import. And I think even if you do get a piece of genetic information that is scary, that changes your understanding of your own health or the health of your family, that information changes the way you live. And the day after you wake up with that information, the way you interact with your friends, your family members, your job, your environment, the natural world is going to be different. And I think that is a profound, profound thing that we should not be afraid of. We shouldn't run from that kind of information. We should embrace it. And I think that's a big piece and part of what we try to do at JScreen.
Myra, did you want to add anything?
No, that was beautifully said.
Yeah, and I think too, to your point, Dr. Goldstein, I think so many people believe their diagnosis is a death sentence, that they literally stop living because they're like, oh, I've been diagnosed with diabetes or ALS or any other type of genetic thing, to the point that it stops them, it cripples them. And I'm a firm believer that whatever cards we are dealt, God's going to give us the answer. You just got to lean into that trust and faith, right? And you make do with what's before you. My mom had a saying, and every time I'm like having a hard day or something, I can just hear her voice saying, Portia, make the best of it, darling. Make the best of it, darling. And I think each and every one of us has the opportunity to make the best of any and everything that's been put before us. Well, everybody, that was Myra Sack and her husband, Dr. Matt Goldstein, Havi's parents, that you heard from today on Grew with Portia. And that concludes our conversation. And until next time, everybody, peace and hair grease, everyone.